is up, everybody? Welcome back to Loreplay. I'm Dana Pereira, and seriously, before I even jump into this episode, I'm just gonna go ahead and ask you a huge favor. Because apparently, Algorithm Daddy doesn't like it when reviews aren't rolling in. So, if you're a listener and you like it, please, for the love of all things haunted, go leave me a rate and review on Apple and Spotify and wherever else they let you do that. If you're on Good Pods or Podchaser, those are excellent places to support me as well. And if you've already done all the things, thank you. I appreciate the support. You can help me out by commenting on social media at LorePlayPod, or reposting my videos, subscribing on YouTube, commenting there as well. There are a lot of free ways to help small creators such as myself, and it only takes a couple of seconds of your time. So if you're a fan of the show, I would really, really appreciate your support in those avenues of getting Loreplay out there in front of more people. And also, fuck me for bringing this up again, but if you happen to be all ears in NC on Apple, you left me an amazing review. Thank you so much for that. But you accidentally, I'm assuming, hit 1 star. It's really driving my rate down. So if that's you and you're listening today, sorry for calling you out, but could you go change that to 5 stars, please? I'd appreciate it. I'm so sorry to call you out like that. It's literally the only way that I can get to you, though, because I don't know who you are. So anyways, for the rest of you, you can also send to your friends or talk about Loreplay in every single conversation you have. Like going for a pap smear? Tell the doc about Loreplay. Parent-teacher conference? Hey teach, have you heard about Loreplay? About to get frisked by TSA? Loreplay. About to get it on with your significant other? I mean, what better way to ruin the moment than to talk about Loreplay? You can literally tell anyone at any time ever. So, okay, enough of the housekeeping and begging you to help me shit. It makes me feel weird. So let's move on to something else that will make us all feel a little weird. A cold open. Well, I guess technically I've already opened, so a lukewarm open. It's February 19th, 1838. You're 18-year-old Jane Alsop. You live in a farmhouse on Bearbinder Lane, which sounds charming, but is actually a very isolated stretch of road between 2 villages outside of London. It's almost 9 o'clock at night. Your dad is home, your sisters are home, and then someone is absolutely crashing out on your front gate. Like throwing their whole body at it, crashing out. So you walk outside, and there's a man in a big cloak. He says he's a police officer. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but only slightly, "For God's sake, bring me a light. We have caught Spring-Heeled Jack here in the lane." I mean, okay, exciting. You've heard the rumors. Everybody has. You fetch a candle, you come back, you hand it to him, and he throws off his cloak. His eyes are red. Not red like he's been crying, red like on fire, glowing, like 2 burning coals have been installed in his face. He's wearing a tight white oilskin suit and a large helmet. And then he opens his mouth and vomits. Vomits blue and white flame directly in your face. Then the claws come out. Metallic claws. He grabs you by the neck and starts tearing your dress apart. You scream. Your sister runs out and fights him off, and he flees into the night. Well, shit. Now you owe her one. That's going to be pricey. And somewhere in London, a man goes home, presumably takes off his oilskin fire vomit suit, and drifts off into a peaceful slumber. Spring-Heeled Jack is one of England's most enduring urban legends. He first appeared in 1837 and tormented people across the country for the better part of 70 years. He never got caught, and then, as legends do, he simply wandered off. He had red eyes, he had metallic claws, he could apparently leap over 9-foot walls with casual disregard. He breathed blue fire, and, crucially, he almost certainly was not a demon. Probably. Now, before we get to the Leaping Devil, let's talk about the world that he was born into. Because, as we know, context matters. The environment in which you live shapes everything. It is the first year of Queen Victoria's reign. She's 18 years old. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing. London is rapidly expanding outward, swallowing up villages and farmland on its margins. The city smells terrible. The Thames is an open sewer. The newspapers are sensationalist, and the class divide is enormous and very visible. It's also a deeply superstitious era. Victorian England was fascinated with ghosts, Gothic literature, and folklore. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein had come out in 1818. The first serialized Gothic penny dreadfuls were in circulation. People absolutely wanted to believe in monsters. And Victorian England had already been through the Hammersmith ghost incident in 1803 and 1804, where a similar cloaked figure terrorized the western fringes of London. A completely innocent man was shot dead by a vigilante who mistook him for a ghost. And if you're new here, head back to episode 10. I cover that story, and it's a fucking banger. So when I say the cultural conditions were ripe for Spring-Heeled Jack, I mean it. England in 1837 was primed, ready, and actively looking for a monster. Enter the first sighting. In October 1837, a businessman walking home near a cemetery in the Black Country, that's an area in the West Midlands named for its coal and iron industry, encountered a cloaked figure that leapt over the cemetery's high iron railings with apparently no effort and landed directly in his path. The man fled. His story wasn't widely believed at the time. I mean, sure, maybe it was just someone that had climbed up already and jumped down. Not crazy suspicious. But then, also in October 1837, a servant girl named Mary Stevens was walking across Clapham Common when a figure leaped out of a dark alley, grabbed her, kissed her face, and tore at her clothing with hands she described as cold and clammy. She screamed, people came running, the figure vanished. Okay, a cold, clammy pervert. Still nothing paranormally suspicious there, but our interest is piqued. The very next day, a similar cloaked figure leapt in front of a passing carriage in Clapham. The horses panicked, the carriage crashed, the driver was seriously injured. Multiple witnesses said the figure escaped by jumping over a 9-foot wall, babbling and cackling. Now, that jump, that's the thing. That's the suspicion. The press caught wind, and London had a new boogeyman. By January 1838, things had escalated enough that Sir John Cowan, the Lord Mayor of London, felt compelled to address the situation publicly at a session held in Mansion House. Which, pause for a second. The Lord Mayor of London, at an official formal meeting, is standing up to talk about this chaos. That's how out of hand this has gotten. During the session, he read aloud from an anonymous letter signed only a resident of Peckham. The letter claimed that a group of men from the highest ranks of life, so wealthy, well-connected gentlemen, had made a wager with a particularly reckless friend. The bet? That this man could not roam the outskirts of London in disguise, appearing as a ghost, a bear, and a devil, and terrorize unsuspecting people. Apparently, he accepted the challenge. According to the letter, the perpetrator had already deprived 7 ladies of their senses. 2 were not expected to recover. 1 maidservant had been thrown into a fatal swoon simply by the figure's appearance, which is basically a sexy way of saying he scared them out of their fucking minds and traumatized the shit out of them, and there's no coming back from it. Once the story hit the press, it exploded. The Times ran it on January 9th. Other papers followed immediately. And within days, the Lord Mayor was standing in front of a packed crowd holding a literal pile of letters from across London, all saying the same thing. This figure had been there, and people were terrified. Women were reportedly scared into violent fits, some even injured by claw-like hands. And, according to a few more dramatic accounts, people had died of fright. The Lord Mayor tried to keep a level head, calling out the exaggerations and insisting no devil was out here performing supernatural feats. But then he admitted someone he trusted had described a servant girl driven into fits by a man in a bear-like disguise. So now he's stuck. Logic on one side, a mountain of fear on the other, ordering police investigations and offering rewards while probably wondering how this became his problem. And just when things couldn't get weirder, a report out of Sussex describes a creature moving on all 4s, growling, scaling walls, and chasing a gardener. Completely different from the London attacks, but now all filed under the same name, Spring-Heeled Jack. And by this point, Spring-Heeled Jack wasn't just a suspect, it was a catch-all for anything terrifying in the dark. Now, because it's 1838 and this is London, people immediately started arguing about what he looked like, because no 2 accounts agreed. Some said he wore a top hat. Some said horns. Some said bat wings. Some said his nose was so long it was basically a beak. The descriptions shifted with every new sighting, accruing details the way a snowball gathers gravel rolling downhill. What they did agree on: the eyes. Always the eyes, like red balls of fire. That detail appears again and again across accounts from people who had no apparent connection to each other. Which brings us back to Jane Alsop, who we met at the top of the episode. February 19th, 1838. Jane went to her father and sisters the next day, and they all went to the magistrate. Her account was documented in detail. The Times ran the story on March 2nd, 1838, under the headline, "The Late Outrage at Old Ford." Jane described her attacker as wearing a large helmet and a tight-fitting white garment like oilskin. Eyes like red balls of fire. She was certain the claws that tore her dress were of some metallic substance. She had cuts on her neck and arms. This was not a ghost story. This was a crime scene report. And anyone else getting like images of Edward Scissorhands in their mind, or is that just me? Maybe Spring-Heeled Jack was just a misunderstood Johnny Depp that wanted to give her poodle a nice haircut. The police, to their credit, took it seriously. A detective named James Lee was assigned to investigate. This is not a junior constable. This is the same James Lee who had previously arrested William Corder, the Red Barn murderer. Another episode I covered back in episode 19. I wonder how many more episodes I can sneak into this one. Lee was a serious person. He arrested a carpenter named Thomas Milbank, who had, in possibly the least subtle move in criminal history, been heard boasting in the Morgan's Arms pub that he was Spring-Heeled Jack. Milbank was found wearing white overalls consistent with Jane's description. The case went to trial before magistrate judges, and it collapsed on a single point. Jane Alsop insisted her attacker had vomited fire. Thomas Milbank, when tested, disappointingly could not breathe fire, and he was released. And, skeptic corner here, a man matching the witness description, found near the scene, wearing the described clothing, who loudly bragged about being Spring-Heeled Jack, walked free because the victim insisted on the fire-breathing detail. This is either the most literal case of the supernatural protecting a criminal, or a case where victim testimony was both credible and partially embellished under trauma. If I was a betting girl, I'd put my money on the latter. 9 days after the Alsop attack, on February 28th, came the case of Lucy Scales. Lucy was 18 years old, the daughter of a butcher in Limehouse. She and her sister had been visiting their brother and were walking home through a narrow passage called Green Dragon Alley when they saw a figure standing in the shadows, wearing a large cloak and carrying a small lamp like those used by police. He didn't speak. He didn't grab anyone. He simply spat a quantity of blue flame directly into Lucy's face. Lucy dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits that continued for several hours. A surgeon later attributed her condition to, quote, hysterics and great agitation, in all probability the result of fright. Thanks, Doc. Also, great agitation. Perfect name for my memoir. The attacker, described as tall, thin, and of gentlemanly appearance, walked away calmly. No running, no leaping, just turned and left. Now, here's where it gets grimly interesting. Despite Lucy Scales being just as clearly assaulted as Jane Alsop, and despite her account being similarly detailed, the newspapers barely covered it. Researcher Carl Bell, in his 2012 book The Legend of Spring-Heeled Jack, argues this was almost certainly because Lucy Scales was working class, and Jane Alsop was not. Jane was a gentleman's daughter. Her attack mattered to the press. Lucy's did not. Same attack, different treatment. Fucking cool to know nothing's changed in a couple millennia. So, who was Spring-Heeled Jack? The most famous suspect, and the one that has captured popular imagination ever since, is Henry de la Poer Beresford, 3rd Marquess of Waterford, known to his contemporaries as the Mad Marquis. And 100% if that guy existed today, middle school boys would be calling him Marquis. I need to paint you a picture of this man. Henry was an Irish peer, highly educated, went to Oxford, from which he was reportedly invited to leave. Not expelled, invited to leave. Victorian politeness operating at full capacity there. He was in the newspapers constantly in the 1830s for drunken brawling, vandalism, and what contemporaries would have called pranks, and what we would now call assault. He would do literally anything for a bet. He had a documented contempt for women. He was present in London during the first Spring-Heeled Jack sightings. In April 1837, just months before the Jack sightings began, Henry and his hunting party were celebrating in Melton Mowbray, a market town, when they found tins of red paint and daubed it across the toll booth and several buildings on the high street. Constables tried to intervene and were beaten up and also painted red. One of his companions was arrested. Henry and friends came back, broke 3 locks, beat 2 more constables, and retrieved their friend. They were eventually found not guilty of riot, but fined €100 each for common assault. This is, according to some etymologists, the origin of the phrase, paint the town red. So this is who we're dealing with. The theory that Henry was Spring-Heeled Jack was first put forward officially by the writer Ebenezer Cobham Brewer in 1880, though the rumor had been circulating since at least 1840. An 1838 news report had already noted that his name, in many quarters, is regarded with as much terror as that of Spring-Heeled Jack himself. Modern authors who support the theory suggest he may have had friends with mechanical engineering expertise design some kind of spring-loaded boot apparatus, and that he had practiced fire spitting, which is a real skill, often using phosphorus or alcohol compounds, as part of the act. There's also a detail from the Turner Street incident in February 1838 where a servant boy looked out before opening the door, saw Jack's most hideous appearance, screamed, and Jack fled, in which the servant noted there was an embroidered coat of arms with a W on the cloak left behind. A W for Waterford. However, Henry married in 1842 and moved to Ireland. By all accounts, he became an entirely different person. Calm, respectable, devoted to his wife. He died in a horse riding accident in 1859, and Spring-Heeled Jack kept going for decades until 1904. So either Henry started something that others continued, or the theory is incomplete. Or both. Most historians who take it seriously land on the first option. Henry was probably behind the original 1837-1838 wave, and what followed was a combination of copycats, moral panic, misattributed crimes, and a legend feeding on itself. After the London wave of 1838, sightings slowed, but didn't stop. Jack had escaped the city and was apparently doing a nationwide tour. In 1843, a fresh wave of sightings swept the country. One report described him as the very image of the devil himself, with horns and eyes of flame. In East Anglia, he began attacking mail coach drivers. Imagine you're a mail coach driver, it's the 1840s, you're just trying to deliver the post, and a fire-breathing, leaping devil comes after you? This is genuinely not what the job posting said. It said, chihuahuas and corgis maybe, but definitely not this. In 1847, Teignmouth had a rash of Jack attacks. A man named Finch was eventually convicted of 2 assaults against women, in which he was wearing, I kid you not, a skin coat that appeared to be made from bullock hide, a skull cap, horns, and a mask. He was a copycat. He was also terrible at it. Then, in 1855, the Devil's Footprints of Devon. After a night of fresh snowfall, people across Devon woke to find approximately 100 miles of hoof-like prints in the snow. 2-legged, leading over rooftops and through walls and in a perfectly straight line. Hundreds of witnesses. This was connected in popular imagination to Spring-Heeled Jack at the time, although the connection is speculative. It remains one of the genuinely unexplained events in Victoria, England. Probably gonna hear an episode on that one at some point in the future too, so stay tuned. Into the 1870s, Jack appears in Peckham, Camberwell, and in one of my favorite entries in this whole saga, he takes on the British Army in 1877. A soldier on duty, reported a cloaked figure advancing through the darkness with a faint metallic clinking. The soldier challenged it. The figure vanished, reappearing beside him, and slapped his face with a hand that was described as cold as death. The soldier fired his rifle. Nothing happened. The figure laughed, a high, thin cackle, leapt over the soldier box, and was gone. A similar encounter happened at the cemetery soldier post the same night. Jack apparently slapped the second soldier as well, was fired at again, and again just left. The army set traps. They found nothing. That same period, angry townspeople in Lincoln reportedly shot at him in the street. He laughed and bounded away over buildings. Now, at this point, I just want to gently observe that Spring-Heeled Jack is surviving multiple gunshot wounds, which is either evidence of the supernatural or is evidence that Victorian soldiers and civilians were fucking terrible shots. Genuinely cannot rule out either. And here's the thing about Spring-Heeled Jack that fascinates me. He started as a monster, a predator, a thing that attacked women on dark lanes and breathed fire in their faces. And Victorian popular culture turned him into a hero. The Penny Dreadfuls, cheap serialized publication sold for a penny an issue, aimed at working class readers who wanted blood and drama and didn't have time for Dickens, picked him up almost immediately. By the 1860s, stories titled Spring-Heeled Jack, the Terror of London, were running in weekly installments. And in these stories, Jack is not a villain. He's a masked aristocratic vigilante. He wears spring-loaded boots. He leaps across rooftops. He fights injustice. He punishes the corrupt and he protects the vulnerable. He is, not to put too fine a point on it, basically Batman, decades before Batman existed. He became the bogeyman used by parents to discipline children. If you misbehave, Spring-Heeled Jack will leap up and look through your bedroom window. His name entered the language. The Oxford English Dictionary noted that Spring-Heeled Jacks became slang for fast-moving street criminals. This is the full life cycle of a Victorian urban legend. A real crime, or set of crimes, generates a monster. The monster takes on a life of its own. The monster gets cleaned and made heroic. And then the monster becomes folklore and lives forever, pretty much detached from whatever real event started it. The last confirmed sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack was in September 1904 in Liverpool. Witnesses reported a figure bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobblestones to rooftops and back, moving with what was described as impossible ease and speed. A crowd gathered. People tried to corner him. He bounded away over buildings and vanished into the dark. He was not seen again, except, sort of. In 1986, a salesman reported seeing a figure leaping high hedgerows in great bounds. And in 2012, another family reported a man jumping away from them at impossible heights. These received no serious investigations. They're footnotes. But they're footnotes that exist. From first sighting to last, 67 years. Multiple locations across England and into Scotland. Not one person ever convicted of being him. So let's break down some of the theories over the years. Theory 1, the aristocratic prank gone viral. This is the most historically supported theory. The anonymous Peckham letter to the Lord Mayor described exactly this. A wealthy man taking a wager to dress as a ghost, a bear, and a devil to frighten villages. The Marquess of Waterford fits the profile almost scarily well. Under this theory, the original Jack was probably Henry, and possibly friends. active from 1837 to 1842. And everything after was the copycats, misattributed crimes, and folklore. Theory 2, mass hysteria and media amplification. Skeptical investigators have argued that the story was dramatically exaggerated through a process in which unsupported rumors, superstition, sensationalist press, and an oral tradition built a snowball that couldn't be stopped. Each new account was colored by the previous accounts. This is well documented in other Victorian moral panics and is almost certainly part of what happened. Almost scary how easily humans can be tricked into a mass hysteria situation. We are not as smart as we think we are. Theory 3, multiple independent pranksters. This isn't incompatible with either of the above. The copycat problem was noted at the time. James Painter, a footman, was caught in March 1838 wearing a white sheet and a monstrous mask attacking women. Unnamed imitators in dozens of other locations. There may never have been one spring-heeled Jack, but rather a cultural template that many people stepped into for their own reasons. And I'm sure amongst them was that they were just misogynistic pieces of drunk shit. Theory 4, something else entirely. And this is the believer in me talking, and I acknowledge this fully. The blue fire is real and technically achievable with phosphorus compounds. The leaping is extreme, but not impossible for a very athletic person with some kind of mechanical aid. And sure, the cold metallic claws, the eyes, 67 years of sightings, they could all probably be explained some way, somehow, with some creativity and imagination. But the bullets? I mean, it's not like bulletproof vests were just laying around for anyone to pick up and try out. So either that dude was extraordinarily lucky or extraterrestrial. No other options. No. Okay, really, I'm not saying it was aliens. I'm not saying it was supernatural. I'm saying the evidence doesn't fully close around any clean human explanation either, and I appreciate that. Final verdict, I guess, almost certainly started as a wealthy man's catastrophically irresponsible prank that became something larger and stranger than any individual prankster. But the women who were attacked were real. Their injuries were real. Their trauma was real. The rest is fog and gaslight in the Victorian capacity for a really good story. Spring-heeled Jack has never really gone away. He's been in comics, novels, video games, television. He remains one of England's most vivid and enduring urban legends. And I think part of why he endures is this. He was never caught. There is no closure, no explanation, no small embarrassed man behind the curtain. Just a figure bounding away over rooftops into the dark, cackling and then gone. Jane Alsop, who told a true and detailed account of an assault she suffered, was believed just enough to be in the newspapers, but not enough to see her attacker convicted. I hope she at least got the satisfaction of knowing her story outlasted everyone who doubted her. Lucy Scales, whose story the papers barely covered because she was working class, I hope she knew that historians 180 years later would note that discrepancy and find it exactly as infuriating as it deserves to be. And for whatever Henry the Queef actually did in the autumn of 1837, I hope those spring-loaded boots gave him at least one good blister. And that is it for this week's episode. Thank you, my friends, for listening. I already did all the call to action stuff in the beginning, so I'll spare you that right now. But, do the rate, review, subscribe-y stuff. And until next time, petition to start calling people queefs more often. All in favor, say aye.